Welcome to Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums, the podcast for professional mums who are doing it all. I'm Jazmin, mum of two, qualified social worker and lover of personal and professional development. And I know firsthand what it's like to juggle career, parenting and everything in between. Here, we dive into real conversations about motherhood, career, health, well-being, and the daily balancing act that comes with it. You'll hear from experts in the field, as well as everyday professional mums sharing their stories, struggles, and wins. So grab your favorite hot drink or reheat the one you forgot about, and let's get into it. This is episode 11 of the Smart, Successful and Stressed Mums podcast. Last episode, we were talking all about one of my main secret weapons, which is now not so secret if you've listened to it, but one of my time-saving hacks, which is around meal prep. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about delegation and using the example of pocket money. So pocket money can be a controversial topic, but we are going there. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully at the end of this episode, if you're not a pocket money advocate, I can convince you to come into the I Give My Kids Pocket Money camp. So what is delegation and what does it look like? We're all probably quite familiar with how delegation looks in a professional setting. If we work in a team environment, we will be quite familiar with how if we're a people manager and we have a large project that we will offload certain tasks or certain elements of that larger project to others in the team. Delegation in the workplace is something that we often do, whether we realize it or not, whether we're a people manager or not, we're often delegating. Even if it's a team project, there's quite often that one member of the team who is the team delegator or the planner who can take big concepts and then break them down into smaller tasks, and then these smaller tasks can be delegated out to others in the team. So we delegate in the workplace seemingly without problem. But why is it that it's so hard for us to delegate in the home? In this episode, in which I'm going to specifically be talking about delegating to your children. So the Commonwealth Bank did a survey and they found that almost 80% of parents in Australia give their children pocket money. So 80%, are you, my amazing listener, are you amongst that 80%? Well, I now am. My little one, who's only 6, doesn't currently get pocket money, but recently my husband and I have introduced pocket money for our older daughter who's in upper primary school. So I'm going to let you know how it's worked so far and how delegating certain tasks to my older daughter has enabled me to have more time to spend elsewhere, and then I guess the benefits to my daughter, because it needs to be mutually beneficial. It's not enough to say, well, I'm saving time, so that's the reason for introducing pocket money if my daughter doesn't see the benefit of the money. So some children may not want pocket money, or I've yet to meet a child who doesn't like to receive cash, but if your child is someone who's not motivated by money, send me a DM. I would absolutely love to know. But in all the mums in my life and the mums I've worked with, most children are incentivized by money. They see that as a reward and they will complete certain tasks to get that remuneration in the form of pocket money. So my children
very good anyway. They tend to do some chores, and they often only have to be asked once. Occasionally I'll have to prompt, especially with my little one. Sometimes she needs prompting, but my daughters have always been the type to help out, and we expect them to help out. And so that, I guess, normalizing the the delegation was something that made it easier to introduce the pocket money. An example of how I've been able to delegate certain tasks to my older daughter and save time. We've heard in the previous episode about how I do meal prep on weekends. So sometimes dinner may just consist of me taking out the frozen pre-made burgers out of the freezer the night before and then cook those and toast some buns and then add some salad and the sauces and things like that. So that's quite an easy dinner to prepare. But sometimes during the week, there's certain elements that I would need to make fresh. For example, if I am making dishes that need to be prepared fresh, it means that those evenings I spend more time in the kitchen. So there's certain tasks that I would delegate. Examples would be setting the table, getting all the condiments out, and also drying some dishes so that when I finish preparing the dinner, that dishes can just be washed, and then the existing dishes that needed to be dried then can just be dried by my daughter, so it sort of doesn't disrupt the flow of the kitchen cleanup at the end of the meal. And sometimes there may be washing that needs to be folded and distributed that my daughter can do while I'm cooking. So one of the rules that I have put in place for myself, and I guess for this whole notion of delegation, is that I don't delegate tasks to my daughter to enable me just to sit back and relax, because I never want to create the expectation of my daughter that she's expected to do tasks while I'm sitting back, relaxing, scrolling through my phone, reading a book, any of those sort of things. So, one of the things I'm really firm about, and you can definitely decide whether such a rule is a good idea in your household, is that if I'm delegating a task, that's because I'm busy with another important task. I would never delegate to my daughter just so I can sit down and have a relax. I definitely do role model to my daughters that we need to have a balance, like that work-life balance, that we're not all just working, doing housework, and those sort of activities. I definitely do role model relaxing time, and my daughters know that I go to the gym regularly, I do Zumba regularly. There's a lot of things that I do regularly as part of like my essential self-care and taking care of my own health and well-being. However, I don't do these tasks while I'm delegating other tasks to them. So they will definitely see me doing these self-care tasks, but normally when I'm engaging in any relaxing time or any of these self-care activities, then they're also having their kind of relax and leisure time as well. So that's how I balance that. And that's also to avoid any feelings of resentment that my daughter has in feeling that, well, is it kind of a role reversal happening? Is it I'm doing all the housework as the child and then mum and dad are sitting back not doing anything? So I'd never want to create that resentment. We had a discussion, my daughter and I, and decided, and then my husband quickly jumped on board. We decided that it would be fair to start remunerating her for the work she was already doing. So we didn't need to use pocket money as an incentive to actually get her to help, because she was already helping. She's already doing all that great work. So we thought it was only fair for her to receive some financial incentive to do so. I was having a look on different websites to prepare for this episode, and quite a few of the resources out there were saying that a guide is $1 per year of your child's age. So if you have a 12-year-old, then that would be $12 a week and so forth. So that's, I guess, a guide, but if you're wanting to introduce pocket money, it's always a good idea to consider what's right for your family and also what your budget as a family will actually allow. Because if you have 6 children and they're all receiving pocket money, that's going to get quite expensive. So it depends on what your own unique budget is. Some children, if they're quite young, they may not sort of understand that they can be remunerated for their tasks. So at the moment, we're not remunerating the youngest daughter, but also our older daughter didn't receive pocket money when she was 6 either. So it may be that we start pocket money for the younger one when she's in upper primary school, like her sister, and then that's kind of like a fair and reasonable way of doing it. I guess if you're wanting to introduce this in your family, it's about what's reasonable for you and whether you feel comfortable with the first step is being comfortable to delegate. And sometimes us as working mums, we do struggle to delegate tasks in the house to our other household members. So that's a first hurdle that we have to get over is being comfortable and okay with delegating. And then when you're comfortable with doing that and that's working quite well, then you can start to introduce monetizing for that through pocket money. And I would love to hear what you think is a reasonable amount for pocket money. I think there's a such thing as being too generous. I feel like if children received, say, $50 a week for just doing a few of these basic household tasks, then it can also lead to these feelings of entitlement. And it's also an unrealistic remuneration for a child to be doing some household tasks. And I remember when I was upper primary school, probably a similar age to my older daughter now, my mum ran a cafe. And my sister and I would work in mum's cafe before school every day of the week. And so we would do, I would say, at least 1 to 2 hours of work prior to going to school. And then on weekends, we would often go with mum to different suppliers to purchase food. So then part of our weekend was also devoted to helping mum with her cafe. And some of the tasks I used to do, I still remember it now. It was such an unpleasant task. I'll never forget it. I used to have to put gloves on and my mum would buy roast chickens from the supermarket and I had to prepare those for the chicken sandwiches. So I'd put gloves on and I have to take all the meat off these chickens and then put them in her sandwich bar area. She made a lot of sandwiches for her customers, and that was one of my tasks. And I remember we would also wash dishes, clean benches, clean floors. I can't really remember other tasks. I felt like we were just always on our feet. There was definitely some serving of customers involved as well, but we worked very, very hard. And the pocket money that we received for, if we worked 2 hours a day, then that would have been 10 hours a week plus weekends. All before our school day started, we got $4 a week each. So I know that the cost of living has gone up now, so we've got pocket money has to go up accordingly, as do salaries. But I did so much for my $4 a week. So there's definitely something to be said about not remunerating too high, but also not undercutting your children in their hard work. And $4 a week, it's just not enough to even get anything these days. I think back then I could get one magazine, either smash hits or TV hits. And then when the magazines went up in price, it might have been like $4.20 or $4.35 or something of the nature. And I remember asking my mother for a salary increase of my pocket money, to which I was told, no, you just had to save part of your next week's money if you wanted to get the magazine. And then I was left with not quite $4, and all I would be able to do with that is either put that towards the next magazine or get a bag of lollies. I think they were about 50 cents each. There's only so many lollies you can eat. And then when you finish them, you don't have anything to show for it. At least with a magazine, you could keep reading it and put the posters up on your wall and things like that. But definitely think about what amount is reasonable for the pocket money and see what you can delegate. So in this episode, we have discussed my now no longer secret second main time-saving hack, which is the art of delegation, and how you can delegate to your children and how they can be remunerated via pocket money. We also spoke about what a reasonable amount of pocket money is and how we can be teaching our children from young that it's important to be remunerated and rewarded for the work that you're doing. It is a good preparation for later employment. Let me know through my social media or send me an email or a DM. What do you think a reasonable amount of pocket money is? And you can base it on the age of your children, but I would love to know what you think is a reasonable amount of pocket money for children, given the cost of living. And thank you so much for tuning in, and happy delegating. I'll see you next time.